Hi, I am Austin Hepworth. I'm here along with Michael Hepworth, and we're back for another podcast episode of The War in Heaven. Today, we wanted to talk about some of Satan's deepfakes, we call them, or some of the imitations or the things he uses, perhaps to help us placate our conscience at times and to more embrace a path of eternal death as opposed to eternal life. To us, life necessarily is entwined with and entails responsibility. Responsibility means we're supposed to act, we're supposed to do things, we're supposed to be agents, people that work to change, to shape, to create, to do. But often we, and I guess, sorry, I should say, and we feel this inside of us. I believe each of us has a natural desire or hunger to do something good, to be a part of something, to help shape the world in some way. Um, but we often will placate that feeling or that prick on our consciousness by turning to other things. And so we wanted to talk today about some of what we see happening in our world where there's so many things readily available to us, how the different ways we spend our time could be us choosing to forego acting on the things we're responsible for and giving into some of Satan's deceptions. And so I guess high level on this is that from the war in heaven perspective, God had a plan for us that wanted to give us eternal life. Satan had a plan that would bring about death, essentially, that would reduce risk, take away responsibility, and make it so that we each would, quote, be saved according as to his definition of being saved. But for God, he wanted us to have a life. And this meant that we chose, we acted, we had agency. And because life and agency itself are inseparably connected. If we have agency to act, though, and if life means that we have to exercise our agency, then it also means that we need to be willing to do things, to solve problems, to address situations. And what often happens in life is that, again, Satan doesn't want us to be involved in these things. And so he'll give us things that start to minimize our impact or that fully detract us from being involved in that which is good. One example that I think a lot of people would recognize is something like pornography. Humans have a natural desire to be loved or be in a loving relationship. And things like pornography will simulate that scenario. They'll produce fillings, but ultimately they leave people more hungry, meaning more empty in the end, because they still don't have that relationship. The only way to have that relationship is to be involved, to work with someone, to sacrifice, to actually go through the hard experiences that relationships entail in order to find a loving situation or scenario. And quite often we want to skip the work side of it. We want it just to be handed to us. So pornography is an easy way to say, here, satisfy some of the emotions that you feel, but don't do anything. Don't be involved. Don't connect with people. Don't try and form a relationship. Don't try and form a family. We'll just hand it to you. And to me, pornography is something, when I look at it, or saying when I view the concept of it, that it is something that is very soul destructive because it mimics something so critical to humanity, which is the essence of relationships and family. But it robs us of the actual fulfillment or satisfaction that comes. And from a lot of what I've read or seen on it, it leads to more and more depression. It leads to feelings of self-loathing or hate quite often. And it really can distort our minds, distort the way we see the world, distort the way we think. It can actually change brain functioning. It's a powerful thing. It's a powerful deception, you could say. And it's one that's, again, very enticing because it's so readily available. And so when we think about this and recognize that, again, I think a lot of people can look at something like pornography and agree that, yeah, it mimics, it doesn't produce something real. It doesn't bring you anything lasting happiness or lasting fulfillment. and it is starting to destroy people. There's more and more scientific evidence even coming out on that. But the question then comes up, where else does Satan do this to us? How else does he get us to accept a substitute or accept something that placates our conscience or that placates a human need we have or a human emotion or that fulfills it for the time being, but leaves us more empty in the end? And in that piece, if we can understand how those are presented to us in life and how Satan packages those as deep fakes, you could say, it helps us be more aware of how we can choose to live our lives in a way that produces more satisfaction, more happiness, where we can be more in control without turning to the things that are deep fakes that aren't necessarily real. So, Michael, curious if you had any thoughts on some of these or any of the items that you want to talk about in relation to this.
Yeah, I think I want to point out quickly that some of the deep fakes we may talk about today, in and of themselves, we might not say are bad. And it's sometimes the level or extreme that we take them. It's the amount of time we spend or our focus or our concentration. Because there are many reasonable things you can do with your time. And sometimes things become a problem as you spend time doing those when you should be doing something else. So whereas in the case of pornography, we may say, I would say just don't participate in pornography at all. Some of the other things that I would consider to be deep fakes that we'll talk about is not entirely leave off and don't bother. It's more of, what is it replacing? Is it giving you a false sense of something that you're doing that you could be doing better at? I think an example, and it's kind of a weird jump to make, but if we look at opportunities for charitable giving in our world today, charity is a very good thing. I encourage people to give to charities, try to help others. But it's an interesting question in the West, in the world, to try to make charity as convenient as possible. So it's just donate money to a cause. Don't worry about anything else. We'll take care of it. And then you can say, I've been charitable. I've donated. I've done my part. Or many times especially in America, I guess governments all over the West, our desire is to have the government solve a lot of the problems. We look at the government as a problem-solving body, and we say there's a societal issue. Let's throw a law at it. Let's throw the government body, and I will do my part by voting, and then I can make sure that other people take care of these particular problems. And again, trying to solve problems, this is good. Being charitable, this is good. But sometimes we say, I donate to charity, therefore I've done my part. And we forget to kind of look around us in our own lives and realize probably the biggest impact we can make when it comes to charity is to those that we come in contact with ourselves. If we let our convenient charitable giving take the place of the charitable spirit we keep in our hearts to help those around us, then our charities become sort of a deep fake. We're not necessarily cultivating that charity in our hearts that allows us to give up of our time to those around us. Lots of times, the biggest impact you're going to make is going to be through effort and time that you can give to people around you, not necessarily through money that you can give. And we like to let the ease and charitable giving kind of take place of us spending time helping other people. And so it's even when it comes to charity, there's a desire to make it convenient and easy. And sometimes that robs us of cultivating charity in our hearts to help those around us. Instead, we want to say, I've done my part. I don't want to spend the time helping out. I would rather participate in all these other activities that I set up for my family that aren't involved in charity. I think even at the level of, I've seen a lot of opportunities to help out in communities, in neighborhoods. There's somebody organizes an event to clean up, to make something look better. people have an opportunity to get out and put in some work. And the percentage of people that show up compared to the number of people that live in the area is really, really small. Most people aren't interested in that kind of charity, but it's the kind of work that can bring communities together. People getting out and working together to make their community look better, their neighborhood look better, clean up, fix something. These are the really important things, but we say, no, we don't have enough time. I'm just going to donate money somewhere and somebody else can take care of it. And I think too often we try to let other people do our charitable work for us instead of participating in ourselves, and we lose out on all that growth.
Yeah, and I think it's wise for you to point out that some of the deepfakes that we'll be talking about aren't necessarily bad all the time, but they can certainly become that because they can start to mask something. And when you talk about charitable giving, it's I think about situations where we give to a charity that helps, refugees or people starving in Africa or different things, and those are very important things to do, and not putting that down. But to your point, if we allow that to become something that then says, I don't need to help you, I give enough, and we don't use it to better our communities, and we don't use it to build, Satan is starting to use that as a deep fake where he's saying, oh, you've already given, you've done your part, you've done enough. Go home and watch your favorite movie or whatever it is. Take a break, go on a vacation. And these are things that we have to start looking at ourselves and realizing, is it replacing something? Am I using this to justify or replace something that I have the responsibility to do? I have a responsibility for my community. I know some churches rely on members to come in and help clean. And sometimes members will say, I donated money. I don't need to spend my time to come in and clean. And again, it's good to donate money to things. But if we start using that to justify inaction in other areas where we have responsibility, it becomes a problem for us. And another area where I see this a lot, again, this isn't something that's inherently bad, which I think is one reason why it's so enticing, but is with sports. With sports, I believe the human soul has this natural desire or inclination to be part of the battle between good and evil. I believe that many people feel called to do something to help promote good. And what happens is that sports teams tend to represent, kind of symbolize this tension between good and evil. If you ever have a little kid come in and see some sports teams on TV they haven't seen before, it's common for the little children to say, who are the good guys and who are the bad guys? It's how they recognize it. And I think inherently we do that too, that there's the good team and the bad team. We're cheering for one. We put so much time, effort, and money into these things. And sports can certainly be a valid form of entertainment or relaxation. But I often wonder, with the level of time and energy we put into this, the fantasy leagues that have now arisen, all the different things, all the time we put into stats and following it, and talking about it, it seems to be doing something more for us than simply entertaining. It's taking the place of us being involved in actually doing something to promote good and help defeat evil. We're being placated. We're being played in a sense by Satan's deepfakes, in a sense of, oh, you have that prickling inside that you should do something. Oh, well, here's another sporting event. Here's another sporting event. Here's another sporting event. And these things mimic, again, there's this battle inside of us, good and evil. We want to help things prevail. We want to work for that. But then it's real easy to put it into sports. And now you can make money off of sports. There's sports betting. There's all these things. And as you watch the massive influx into these, how much money America pushes in sports, it's always interesting to me. We get really upset in America. We say, holy cow, the president spent $3 billion on the presidential election. And we're so appalled that so much money pours into politics. And I'm not here saying that's not a lot of money at all. But we don't even remotely say the same thing with sports. Sports makes way more per year. Americans put way more time and money and energy into sports than they do into politics. And why aren't we concerned that Americans are pouring so much of their time and resources into something like sports that at the end of the day produces nothing lasting for those watching? Maybe for those participating, it can be life-changing. You can have some good life experiences. But for those watching, your team loses or wins, well, the next week, it's right back to it. It's almost like a pornography. You just have to be there again, to be there again. You have to be there again, watch again, watch again, watch again. And we go from week to week. We travel around the country. And again, it's not necessarily saying there's not a time or place for that, or you can't do that, but it's more saying, what are you letting it replace in your life? And are you using it to hide the fact that there's other things you should be putting your time, attention, or resources into? And I've often thought, if America could just get to the place where we could just pick even, like, let's say 1 out of every 10 sporting events, let's just forego the sporting event and put the same amount of time and money into changing our world, into building community, we would have incredible communities here in America with the amount of time that would go into them. And I think that it is very critical for us to start to look this way, to say, is there something I can do to change the world? Well, maybe I could forego a sporting event and take the ticket money or the time and put it towards something. And again, we talk about money kind of being something that can placate your conscience too, where you don't be involved. But I mean to take it and be intentional about it. Put it into something in your community. Put it into a neighboring family. Do something for someone that could help them. Go to the homeless around you. Many cities have homeless issues and people who need help and different things. And be involved personally. And I think that there's so much that will come into our lives. I know there's so much that will come into our lives and into our country if we can break away from some of our placebos or the things that kind of just say, oh, it's okay. Watch another sporting event. Watch another sporting event. And these are things that I believe Satan uses to just kind of placate our souls and say, yeah, don't worry about it. It's someone else's problem. Someone else can help those people. Someone else will come up with the solution. The government's got us, whatever it is. But if we really look at how we spend our time and money, it tells us a lot about where our priorities are. And if we're not putting our time and money and efforts into something that can build and create and can be lasting, then it's probably being used to get us to not be involved in these things. And we'll probably grow more depressed, less satisfied with life, and looking desperately to find some level of fulfillment or satisfaction. I remember listening to a lady once say, she goes, I don't know. I just wish there was something worthwhile on TV. She goes, just watch it and watch it. And it's always so boring. And I think we live in a day and age when we have more entertainment than the world's ever had, and we're bored to death. And it's likely because we're not involved in meaningful activities. And eventually our souls just get hungry for something of substance. We don't need another show to watch. We don't need another sporting event. We need something of substance. And God is always inviting us, good is always inviting us to be involved, to make choices, to do things. And so we do have to be careful about looking at how we're using our time and understanding, am I not addressing something? Do I turn to movies to not address something? Do I turn to video games to not address something? Do I give to charity so I don't have to feel bad about not going out and spending time in my community? And what are the things that we're doing that maybe justify or satisfy certain emotions or impulses inside of us that maybe we should be looking to and recognizing these are impulses. For example, the desire to be part of the fight between good and evil. It's an impulse to say, act. Don't sit there. Don't watch something to satisfy that. I've contributed nothing to that at that point. And so it's going to be fake. It's not going to really fulfill that need or that desire inside me. Michael, do you have any thoughts or additional comments on some of those things?
Yeah, I like your point on what we have available to us, and yet how bored we are is an interesting one. I think that we could talk some more about. In that, I think most people understand that when you put in a lot of effort for something and you're successful with it, um, that usually brings a lot of meaning into your life. It brings a lot of satisfaction. We usually understand it well when it comes to physical challenges. Um, an individual say, I want to be able to run a half marathon. I've never done that before. And they'll work and they'll work and they'll work and they'll run the half marathon and then they feel really good. And I think most of us are searching for that satisfaction, that outcome that makes us feel really good. But it's competing with what Satan's presenting to us, which is convenience. We in this world we are desperate for convenience. We want everything to be as convenient as possible. But the problem is that these lasting meanings in our life or these lasting pieces of satisfaction can't be obtained conveniently. Convenience doesn't bring lasting satisfaction. And so we're searching for satisfaction, but we want it to be convenient. And so we just chase the next convenience, one thing after another, because they promise some sort of temporary entertainment, satisfaction, nothing that's lasting, but that's okay. It's convenient. I can just go do it again and try to let that fill me up. But your point is that we always end up feeling much emptier than we have before. Um, we see far more issues with depression and anxiety and all kinds of things like that in today's world than ever before. But you look around at in the West, particular, how safe we are, how much we have provided for us. Our lives are very good, and yet what is missing? Where's that meaning going? And it really is because we're trying to gain meaning, but we're pursuing it through these convenient measures that will never bring it to us. Um, in a book, Brandon Mole wrote a book called The Beyonders. In it, he had one of his characters say he was at a mythical place that just provided for all of his needs. It was a hotel of sorts. And he said, indulgence is emptiness. I have probed the limits with food and frivolity. There's no real fulfillment in meaningless rushes of pleasure. You try to conceal the emptiness with more extravagance, only to find the thrills becoming less satisfying and more fleeting. Most pleasures are best as seasoning, not the main course. However you try to disguise it, you end up feeding without being nourished. And another character said, well, if this is the case, if you're eating but you're not being nourished, if you're finding the thrills becoming less satisfying, why do you stay here? And he said, empty or not, the lifestyle is addictive. It breeds a fear of real life. And I think that's what Satan's deep fakes do. The more we give our lives to the temporary fleeting pleasures, the conveniences, the easiness, the more we fear the difficulty that's involved in gaining lasting satisfaction. The harder it is to get involved in something that will require effort from us, something where we have to put in a lot of mental effort, physical effort, time, energy. We're so used to getting a quick feedback without putting in a lot of effort that it becomes, maybe we're fearful, maybe it just doesn't seem like something we'd want to do, but we worry about putting in that kind of time to get some sort of lasting satisfaction. And so when it comes to these deep fakes we're talking about, I think the question for us is it taking away our ability to be involved and to put forth effort and improving ourselves? If it's, well, I don't want to learn that new skill or I don't want to gain that new knowledge because that's just too hard. It's going to require me to study for a year. It's going to require me to exercise for a year. We should be concerned about that because we need to be willing to put in effort. It takes great effort to make great changes. And we need a lot of effort in this world to help continue to pursue good, to help make positive changes in other people's lives. It's going to take work. And if we just fill up our lives with the indulgence of emptiness, we're not going to want to put in that effort. We're going to want to just stick to the things that feel comfortable and that give us momentary pleasure that we can try to revisit over and over again.
Yeah, and it's interesting to look at that because one of the things that is happening is we see um, more and more people that become afraid of responsibility in life, even in higher education and things. Um, we have these, I don't know, we call them safe zones or whatnot, where they're trying to help people not have conflicting ideas presented to them. They're trying to help them work through their problems. And I think that I saw a news article that said the Iliad and the Odyssey or something were flagged at one university by, as being containing potentially triggering content for people. And this is certainly something that I believe goes hand in hand with the more deepfakes we consume, to your point, the more fearful we become of real life. It feels impossible to us to actually face the actual challenges of the day. Life becomes about likes. For example, that's another thing. If you live for likes on social media, it's probably feeding a desire you have, but that will never be satisfied. It just becomes stronger and stronger. You want more and more likes. It can become addictive trying to get those. Um, and people start changing quite a bit, and they start experiencing, I'd say, more anxiety, more depression, um, because all these things can become addictive. Alcohol can become addictive. It gives a momentary pleasure, but it doesn't produce the satisfaction of feeling healthy or feeling happiness or any of those things. Um, and our bodies and minds can become addicted to these things because it produces a hit of dopamine, they call it, where there's something that feels good for the moment, it satiates something, and then we want it again and again and again. And if we're finding pleasure in life without work, without involvement, then it's fake, ultimately. And it will rob us of real satisfaction in life, and it will produce anxiety, it will produce depression over time. The more we try and feed this, and there's really no substitute for hard work. I fully believe that life entails work. Life and work go hand in hand. Life means agency. Agency means choosing and being active. We do something. And to me, when I look at the state of America we're in, and I see Satan's handiwork, and it's almost like he laughs. He's like, I make it so simple. Say, here's a dopamine rush, and just hand it to him. And we have incredibly unhealthy people from a physical perspective. We have incredibly unhealthy people from a spiritual perspective. We have incredible unhealthiness from a mental and emotional perspective. And yet we're the richest country. And again, what do riches do for us? They make it so that we can replace real work in our life. And when we replace real work, we replace happiness, we replace true fulfillment. And another thing I view right now that's happening, there's this super intense push for people to travel. They're looking for happiness in traveling. And it's, life's about the next trip, the next trip. The trips are fleeting. You come home, and it can be neat to travel. It can be neat to see things. I'm not saying it's not. But when it becomes our basis for motivation, when it becomes the basis for trying to maybe escape the other things we should be working on or doing, it becomes hollow for us, and it produces these same types of problems. And so again, whether it's through sports, whether it's through travel, whether it's through escaping into a book, some people will just choose to read and read and read. Um, and it's interesting. I have one connection online. He posted, he said, yeah, I've had Audible, I think, for 36 months or something like that. And it showed his time, his listening time on Audible, and he was at 4 months. He literally spent 4 months of time listening. And that could be an honest desire to pursue truth. I don't know. I'm not judging this person particularly. Um, but I also do wonder, but what did you miss out on during that time? Are there other things in life? Again, maybe it's just commuting time. I don't know. But I look at myself and I think about that. I think, what do my actions say about me? am I putting time into the things that deliver value, that make life worthwhile? Or am I just asking for happiness today, happiness today, happiness today without work? And if I'm asking for happiness today without work, if I'm praying to God, or if I'm pursuing those things in life, essentially I'm asking for kind of for a magic carpet ride. And the fascinating thing about a magic carpet ride is, back to your point, Michael, about the half marathon, the thrill or the satisfaction that comes from a half marathon isn't in getting from point A to point B. The magic carpet ride will take you from point A to point B. Maybe you'll even win because you got there faster than everyone. But you won't feel any happiness for getting handed a trophy for getting across the finish line faster by taking a magic carpet ride. The magic carpets are the deep fakes that rob us of the satisfaction of running the marathon or of cooking and preparing the meal. We can go out and just buy food, right? I know so many families that have stopped doing the work of preparing Thanksgiving meals together, and they just buy it pre-made. And their satisfaction levels with Thanksgiving go down. Ultimately, fewer and fewer people get together. And the thing is that all good things take work. Life takes work. If we want good to prevail, it takes work. We need to insert ourselves and be involved. We need to use our agency, and not just pass the buck on to someone else. We don't pass it on to the government to say, hey, fix this problem for us. We don't pass it on to the charities to say, hey, you solve homelessness for us. We don't pass it on to the travel agent to say, make me happy with my next trip. We need to take responsibility. And again, traveling or a sporting event can be super fun and super fulfilling if we worked for it. So one of the fascinating things is a trip can be crazy meaningful in a child's life when we work for it, when we're excited about it, when we go do it. But if it's just there all the time and we're just handing it, and it's a dad that's working all the time, he's like, oh, well, I'm not home with you, so I'll send you on another trip. I'll send you on another trip. Those children want time with their dad. They don't want another trip necessarily. They want meaningful time with their dad. And any of these replacements that come in that cut out our agency, then rob us of the satisfaction that comes from actually running that marathon. And I know for me, one of the things I realized about myself after a while is when I looked at my prayers were coming from a mindset of kind of a genie in a bottle or a magic carpet ride approach. I was asking God for the end result of something without the journey. I was asking to skip the journey. So if I found myself sick, for example, I'd say, oh, bless me with health, even though I hadn't been out exercising or eating healthy. And I was asking for something. And essentially, even though I wasn't openly saying this, I was asking to skip the journey involved with it. I want God to bless the world with peace, but yeah, I don't want to do the work of being a peacemaker. That's difficult. That takes a lot of time and energy and things. And so as I looked at my prayers and realized, whoa, I'm literally praying like God is a genie in a bottle, and I'm just making these wishes of just give me everything, but take away the journey. And I think the point of our discussion today is that being handed everything, getting from point A to point B in the marathon, is missing the entire point of the marathon. The entire point of the marathon is, can you do it? Can you make it that far? Can you work? Can you strive? That's fulfillment. That's where happiness comes from. And we will always miss that if we're substituting work for some of these other things. Michael, do you have any other thoughts or comments for us?
Yeah, the only thing I was thinking about as you were talking about that was, how are we spending our time? And are we just trying to, like you say, take the magic carpet ride to the finish? I see a lot of individuals who have scheduled their lives such that they're always doing something for them or their children, and they're just incredibly busy. And if you try to set up time to meet with them, talk to them, or ask for their help to do something, they can't because they have something scheduled every hour of every day. And there's a lot of opportunities available to us. And setting things up for your children or yourself to go experience, to do. Maybe you're involved in sports, maybe you're involved in different clubs. These can be good things, but then suddenly you're robbed of all the time you have of building up your community, your neighborhood, your church community. You say, "Oh, I can't be involved in these things because I've scheduled my life away," and it feels like we are trying to take the magic carpet right at the finish. We're saying, "Hey, I'm going to jump the line and ignore things that are not as fun. It's not as fun to help out your community, maybe. It's not as fun to spend time with neighbors that you may not like as much to try to build good relationships, and just do all the things that I think are interesting. And then hopefully my community makes it and it's still a good place to live. And by the time I'm done with all these things, maybe I'll be a good person. And if I ever need help, hopefully somebody will show up, even though I haven't tried to cultivate any relationships with anybody." We just have to be really careful that we're not letting our overindulgence get in the way of the things that actually are meaningful and will help build up our lives. I've read a lot of stories about individuals settling America in the 1800s, and I don't know that any of us would want to trade our lives for what they had. They certainly had to work a whole lot harder than we did with far fewer opportunities than we have. But I look at their mental stability, I look at their satisfaction in life, and they had high levels of satisfaction, high levels of mental stability. And so I say, is there something we can do today that doesn't involve getting rid of all the nice things that we have, but still allows us to try to have those levels of satisfaction? And it really has to come down to work. Don't skip the line, put in the effort. We don't need to get rid of electricity and go out and plow the fields again, but don't be afraid of doing some work. Try to put in some time. Don't go for the deep fake, for the easy out. Those can be good, as Brandon Mole said in that he said the thrills or the pleasures are best as a seasoning, not the main course. All these opportunities we have, they should be a seasoning on our lives, but the main course of our lives should be work, effort, taking the path that leads to lasting happiness and satisfaction.
Yeah, I think I certainly feel more and more as I look at things. I guess saying I feel stronger and stronger that work is one of the amazing solutions that we have. Again, because work is so closely connected to life. And this isn't to say that you have to work every day of your life. There's a proper balance to things. There are times to enjoy, to relax. There are times to watch a movie or a sporting event. There are certainly times to donate to charity and do those things. And maybe some of us could donate more than we are. Maybe we're using money on things we don't need to be using it on. And there are many good charities out there. But at the end of the day, we can't replace our donations with being willing to work ourselves and just to step in and help out. And going back to the very beginning of this earth life with Adam, the Adam and Eve get driven out of the Garden of Eden. And it's interesting because what he's told is, God says, "Cursed is the ground for thy sake." And the curse is that thorns also and thistles shall it bring forth to thee. And then he says, "In the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread, till thou return into the ground. For out of it wast thou taken, for dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return." And in the, right as Adam and Eve are getting kicked out of the Garden of Eden, God says, "I'm going to curse the ground for your sake. It's going to produce thorns. It's going to produce thistles," meaning there's going to be hard things. There's going to be things to work through. It's not just going to be a walk in the park. But I did this for your sake. I did this so that you learn the value and the meaning of work and of effort. And to me, that's also, again, kind of inextricably tied to the value of creation. We are here to create. We're here to shape the future. If you look at the future, And if you think, what did I do today to shape my future tomorrow? That's a really interesting question to ask yourself. Did I just consume? Did I watch movies? Did I play video games? Did I do sport when I watch sports? What was I contributing to shape the future, to make tomorrow something better for myself and for others? If we adopt the mindset of working to shape tomorrow, that's a faith-based place to be at. We're using faith. We're living by faith. We're starting to work. Faith is a belief and an action combined together. Those two things start to go, and we start to gain purpose. We start to gain meaning. We lose fear because we're striving to shape a tomorrow. And we're not asking God just to take me from this point to a happy point. We're saying and understanding it's the journey that produces the happiness. It's the journey that we want to be part of. It's the work. God cursed the ground for our sake. It's to help us work. It's to help us have purpose, to have that meaning, to be willing to work and to push and to strive. And so the invitation to you is to look at your life and really take stock of how you use your time, how you use your resources. Do you need to put as much money into the entertainment you are? Do you need to travel as much as you are? Do you need to read as many books? Or do you need to read more books? I don't know. There's a balance, obviously, to things. But are you connecting with people around you? Are you putting something towards solving the problems of the world, solving your own problems, addressing things in your family? What are you doing to make tomorrow better? Are you contributing to that? And if so, if you're doing those things, you'll find more and more satisfaction the more that you're able to do those and be intentional about those. If you're not satisfied in your life and you're looking for satisfaction, you're looking for happiness, it will come from a point of creation, a point of contributing to shape tomorrow and being willing to do the work that's associated with that. Michael, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up today?
No, I think you've covered it pretty well. I think work is the antidote to the deep fake. If you're trying to define those deep fakes in your life, I think the indicator may be piling up of conveniences and easy satisfactions and the avoidance of work. I think in those areas you could probably look and find areas of the deep fake and places you could put in more effort probably.
Yeah. And then again, as we embrace the journey and move forward and stop asking to be taken from point A to point B without the journey, life becomes way more meaningful, and we're living, I think, as God intends us to live, and we're starting to embrace His life. And so, and I guess even just to throw out, God worked for 6 days, it says, to create the earth. He put in the work and efforts. He did take a break. Again, there's time for breaks and rest. But we do need to be working to find that fulfillment, that happiness that can be ours. And so thanks for joining us today. And we look forward to following up with you more next week.